All right, we're here at the Source Endurance Survival Camp, sitting here with Brian McCulloch, former winner of BWR, and we wrapped up first day. What was it, a little 40-mile ride we did out there?
Just a little bit more than, and it was a little more than 40 miles, but we got really the hardcore. We got to see the first dirt section, and we got to see the last two dirt sections, which are so critical because that's the opening salvo for the day, and then it's like the finishing tough day sandwich, shall we say. So it was really important to see those dirt sectors and see them in a really raw state, right? Like they were really rough today.
Yeah, today was, it got a little rain last night, so it actually was pretty prime, but then it was also a little wet in some areas. Is this the first time you've come to this camp?
It's the first time I've done the BWR survival camp, and it's such a neat idea, right? Like this event, BWR is so hard. It's just such a monumental thing to achieve. It's really cool to see these campers, and we have all types of campers here, right? We have people that it's their first time, a lot of people from the Midwest, and so they're trying to build towards this epic event and completion of this epic event. And so as a coach here, my role and what I want to do is I want to see everybody coming away with nuggets that they can take into their preparation, because we have 4 months roughly until the race. Like there's a lot of time that things can go really well for you, or there's a lot of time that things can unravel.
So there's a lot of people here that are not from around this area. It seems like a lot of people traveled for this, and a lot of people haven't done BWR. So coming into camp, how would you say from your perspective, because you've done the race, you've won the race, you are a coach, what do these people need to know, and what do they need to experience to where they can leave camp on Sunday and go, okay, I have a much better idea on what I need to do to be ready for BWR?
That's a great question, Horno. I would think the most important thing that people are going to think about, I would say the first thing that people are going to think about is just the fitness necessary to complete this task. But what I'm here to tell you is it's so important to be able to apply that fitness, okay? When you get to the BWR, what makes it the hardest race around is that you have to have all of these skills, and all of those layers have to be developed and put to use on that day. So what the campers are, it's not just about fitness this weekend. Yeah, it's 3 great rides, but it's actually about choosing the best line. Well, maybe there's somebody in the line in front of me, so my options for lines are now my B, C, D option for lines because someone else is on the racing line. Or maybe the other option is I have to back up off of that person, give them some space so I can stay on the racing line. And as a racer yourself, you know that, you see that, and you know how to apply that. But infusing that knowledge and experience into people, that's what camp is important for. That's what they need to know, is that nothing replaces the ability to look ahead, make a good decision, and navigate the section without issue. It's not always about speed. It's about getting through the day safely.
So, yeah, speaking on that, I actually heard you out there today in our group quite a bit when we were on the dirt. You're kind of, giving some tips and tricks to some of the riders to navigate throughout the dirt, because obviously that can catch some people off guard. What comes to mind to you that when you see people riding on the dirt and they're doing wrong that they could be doing right?
I think it's really simple. If we look ahead, that's the first thing, because our perspective has to shift. And when our perspective is just staring at the front tire or the rock in front of us, the world looks pretty hairy. But when we look up, we look out in front of us, we have so many more options for line selection. And speaking of line selection, I think, and you know this, Horno, it's so important to look for good, clean lines. A lot of times in these trails, the edges are very, very good. Right? So what I was trying to instruct the guys and gals about today was looking for that line, okay? Looking towards the edges often, but sometimes you're on a truck trail and the 2 drive wheels where the trucks drive are the most beat up. So sometimes you need to ride in the center, right? So it's always looking around at how that might change, okay? So the smoothest line is the fastest line.
So, looking back, obviously you've won this race, and I know last year you didn't have the race that you wanted to, but, I think that kind of is what BWR is, because it is no joke and it's hard, and you can have a great day or you can have, a bad day. Kind of since you've done both those worlds, as far as, a good day and a bad day, what what do you take from that as far as like your experience with BWR and like moving forward, and like how you want to apply to the next year or this year's race, or like how maybe you'll do something different, or like I just, the event in a whole, because you've really had like both sides to it.
Yeah, let's not forget the first year I did it, I crashed and broke my hand, and then I had to finish with the broken hand. And this as a motorcycle racer, like we don't stop. Nothing, like we will finish this. And that's really what I hope that people, if you're at home and you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm doing a lot of trainer time, or maybe I don't know about the dirt, I'm a little unsure. The most important thing I think for everyone is mindset, and having an unrelenting mind, and being that you will finish this. You will find a way to finish. And so when I look back at breaking my hand, or when I look back and last year when I really rode very poorly, I think of everybody has a moment when they're in the deepest, darkest place that they're not prepared for, maybe physically, emotionally, whatever. And when you're there, you just have to know that you have an unbreakable will and that you will not quit. And so what I tell people out on the road today is that the first rule of ultra endurance racing is that you just have to keep moving. You don't have to move fast. You just have to keep moving. And so when I think moving forward into 2020 for me, who knows what's going to happen this year? But I can tell you this, that I just want to squeeze the lemon. If my body is the lemon, I want to squeeze the lemon completely at BWR 2020. And that's all I care about. And I think for everyone listening to this podcast, we want to make you the juiciest lemon possible so that you can squeeze it all out that day, because this race demands everything from you and maybe a little more, but you have it in you to do it.
So last year, like, you didn't have the best race, but, you hear that all the time with people, because like, oh, I had a bad day, or I had a bad race, but like no one really breaks that down. So like last year when you didn't have a good race, like when you look back at that, so what did you learn from that? What maybe did you maybe like not eat enough, not drink enough, or, maybe your training was a little off before then? Because, everyone's always trying to, build the perfect, schedule up to the BWR race so they're at their best. You've had both sides like we talked about. Like, where would you look back last year and go, okay, maybe I should have done X, Y, or Z different, or, this different from that?
When you have a monument like Belgian Waffle Ride, it's easy to think if some is good, more is better. And if more is better, a whole lot more must be great, right? And that's not always true, okay? So what I did was I thought, well, I did X amount of training to win in 2018. So then in 2019, I'm going to add X plus. And what I did was I didn't account for the fact that we had a new baby in our life and I wasn't sleeping and there was all these things going on. So I ended up overtrained. And really, there's a dirty, two faces to overtrained. It was under-recovered, okay? And so I've learned a lot from that. And that helps me a lot as a coach with Big Wheel Coaching. But what I want people to see is that can happen to them too, because there's this reality when you're taking on the Belgian Waffle Ride, that it's 140 miles of ultra demanding, the best competition, the most treacherous roads. There's all these things. So I'm going to work harder. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to work harder and work harder. And what I'm here to tell you is that anyone listening to this, you have to do the work. There's no way to fake it. You have to do the work. But I want you to add this little asterisk. There's a dichotomy there. And that is this. I would rather you be 5% undertrained than 0.5% overtrained, okay? Because I was overtrained last year, and what happened was I got dropped at 2 hours, and I had 5 hours of lonely riding where you were only me and my mind and battling myself, okay? And I want you to know, number one, that you have the mindset to do it, and number two, if you're fresh, that is worth something. It's worth a whole lot, okay? So don't overdo it. If you need professional help, there's plenty of great coaches out there that you can seek, and by no means am I trying to push that, but what I want people to understand is that freshness matters in an event like this, and you can overdo it. So dance that line intelligently, shall I say. So
give me like an example of like what you were doing last year where you would consider that overtraining as far as like by the numbers, maybe you're doing how many days or how many hours for the week, and how you're going to adjust that for this year to where you're not going to get to that overtrain. Like talk about you're going to come in a little fresh. Like give us a little bit of a training breakdown from your perspective.
Okay, last year, let's say 2018 when I won it, at that time, I was training for 5-day stage races, UCI stage races. So what we did was like most weeks I did a 5-day block of training, but then I would balance that with 2 days of recovery or multiple days of recovery following that. And it was mostly endurance riding, sprinting, just short efforts, more polarized type training. And in 2019, I had the opportunity to get some motor pacing. And so I did all the intervals that I was normally doing, and then I added motor pacing on top of that. Bad idea. And
so like, why do you say that's a bad idea?
It was too much intensity for me to recover from, because at the time we had a 1 year, well, he was less than 1 year old at that time. We had a 7-month-old, 6-month-old, and we were up 3 times a night trying to support my wife. And our son Seamus he's awesome. He's a little little wrecking ball, but he doesn't sleep. And so, to the mothers out there and the fathers out there, like I tip my hat to you. And I overdid it. And so now this year, to go backwards, is I'll maintain those intervals that I've had, that polarized style of training. I like to race myself into fitness a lot, but the component that I will pay much more attention to is freshness. So I will start my build-up quite a bit further out, just because I need more time to recover properly. But that means the juxtaposition there is that I need to start sooner doing bigger rides, so that I can handle that workload, recover from those blocks of training. Because this is a 1-day race, much different than 5-day stage races, as you know.
So like, what is like for you? You're a professional cyclist. This is your job. Like right now, when you go home, what does an average week look like for you on the bike? Like, what are you actually doing?
Well, to give you, I'll paint a little picture. 2017, 2018, I was training 30 to 35 hours a week. And, pretty much every week. It was pretty nuts. I did a 38-hour week after I came back from the Tour of Taiwan. That was stupid. But anyway, I digress. But when we had Seamus, I was still doing 25 to 30-hour weeks. And I thought, well, I dropped 5 hours a week. That's a reasonable, concession. But this year I'm doing 20 to 25. Right, and that seems to work out pretty well at the moment. And what I would say is I don't mind it being 18. Right, there's this old notion of pro cycling where it's like, oh, if you want to be a domestic pro, you have to train 20 hours or more. And I at the time we were racing international, and we still do race internationally. So I thought, 25 is the next logical step. But in the reality is I've got so many years of doing it, I need to focus more on the high quality efforts. And that demands more recovery. And so I'm doing things differently, like more weight training, more core training, those kind of things that as a 37-year-old athlete, I need more of, and that I do for my athletes that I coach, rather than thinking, I can just primarily just ride my bike and ride it a lot and race it a lot and I'll be good.
How many days would you be doing like some type of gym workout toward his legs, core, whatever?
I do gym work. Well, I have a little core routine that I do like 4 days a week. And then going to the actual gym, like lifting some heavy stuff, that's at least once a week, but most of the time twice a week. And I always do that with my double day, kind of my interval sessions with that, right? And so for those of you at home who are trainer folks, you can do it on the trainer as well. So, then the next day you can ride easy,
So speaking on more of the event and like the state of cycling where it is now, you're still on a professional road team where your job is primarily the road stage races, the typical stuff, but all these events like BWR are getting bigger and bigger, and like it seems like just the floodgates have opened now from, road pros, Pete Stetna's, TJ Eisenhart's, Ian Boswell, they're all coming over and doing all these events now, and these events are getting bigger and more people are coming. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because you've kind of done these events, but you're still on the road team program, but the landscape is kind of shifting in the U.S. at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. We'll see what happens this year, and obviously with more people coming, it makes it a much more dynamic race because the tactical element becomes much more important. And it's not, and that's something that I love about road cycling. And so what's kept me in road cycling is that I love the team atmosphere. I love being a part of my teammates' wins. I love supporting them. That's why I'm a coach. I like supporting people and helping them be their very best. But at the same time, I like getting in the trenches and being a bit of a crash test dummy myself. I like testing myself and exploring the depths of my own pain cave. And so what I would say is, I don't know what 2020 is going to hold for the gravel events, but I can tell you they're going to be super, super competitive. And for me, at least where I sit, I don't want to change anything about these events, especially like BWR. I just want to be a part of the fabric of it. And it's something that it's shaped me in a lot of ways and me as an athlete. And so to me, that experience that you get by going that deep at these races is something you just can't get anywhere else. And so that's why I'm here, is to experience that and find a little more in myself every time. And so as long as there's a BWR, I will make it a priority to be here, because I love that test.
Like how do you think that would be, as far as like when you go to a race with your team, Elevate KHS Pro, you have 8 guys, and it depends on the race, whether it's a climber race or a sprinter race, as far as like whose role is what. You have guys that are only job is just getting the break. You have guys that are just doing the pulling, the domestic stuff. You have guys that are just getting the bottles. BWR and these kind of events have kind of just been like one-man shows. The team hasn't really come here yet. Not saying like your team, but I'm just saying like the team element. No one's showing up with 5-6 guys. But like if it starts going that way, like how do you feel like these events would change in that manner? Like, can you imagine if you were here and you had 7 of your teammates here, compared to just you?
Well, that's an interesting thing to ponder, and I know at least that conversation comes up a lot when we're riding and doing these kind of events, and people are saying, "Oh, well, poo-poo that. We don't want that. We don't want this." And one thing I'll tell you that I think is really missing, at least from the cultural understanding of team aspect racing, is that a team is a really powerful thing. We can move further and faster as a unit. That's what a peloton is. It's more aerodynamic than a jet plane, folks. Like a peloton is a very, very good thing. And so having friendly wheels in that peloton is a very, very good thing. And so at this particular moment, I know a number of guys because I've raced a long time. I mean, I've been doing this a day or 4. But like, what if you're a new guy and you don't know what to do? How do you even break into an event like this? Because if we look at old school road culture, they try to break in younger riders and help them with shorter events and get them to understand the rodeo of this. And here we have this juxtaposition where now people are doing lead boat, which is, 2 incredibly difficult rides back to back. There's literally only a handful of people that can probably do that and not be completely jacked for the rest of the year. Okay. And so what I would think the powerful thing of a team element could be some form of mentorship to help people be successful in this venue, because it's much harder than people give it credit. I know that anyone who's done BWR one time, anyone who's had any sort of mechanical out there and then had to ride the rest of the day kind of hampered by that, they know how challenging and difficult these events can be. And so the one thing about the team element is having friendly wheels can give us the opportunity to do that. And by no means, folks, am I advocating for the team, road racing tactics and radios and team cars. I'm not advocating for any of that. I'm merely saying that we want to keep that gravel vibe of everybody helps everybody intact and not let it get too competitive. And I think that's an important thing to I don't know how to put it, but I think that's important. Like, I like rolling up to the line and being like, "Hi, Ted King. How are you today? I haven't seen you in a while. What's going on? Hi, John Hornbeck. What's going on?" Right? But that doesn't happen at the road events because there's so much riding on them, and that's changing now in gravel. There's a lot riding on these things.
All right, so before we wrap this up, do you what are some quick little advice tips that you can give to whoever's out there listening prior to BWR? What can you leave with them?
I want to talk to everyone about equipment, okay? There's just a simple way that I look at equipment that I hope can help you. And it's simple in my mind, and I hope I can break it down to be simple. You can outride the equipment and then the equipment fails. And when the equipment fails, that causes a crash, and that's something you don't want. So when you're thinking about, well, the BWR is mostly road, I should probably go to a more road setup. I don't think that's the accurate way. That's not the whole point of the event. I think having equipment that is durable and can make up for any shortcomings you have, i.e. any mistakes, is absolutely invaluable. I would rather carry a couple extra pounds or have wider tires that allow me to make a mistake here or there or to get off the racing line rather than trying to have something that's boutique, super light, trying to go, high speed, low drag. So for everyone at home, really work on your skill set, really work on your confidence in the dirt, but also understand that equipment can save you, and really good equipment is worth its weight in gold, okay? Because no one wants to get out there at mile 80 when there's 4 or 5 miles to the next aid station, and then the only way there is to hike a bike because you're out of tubes, you're out of CO2, you've blown through your tubeless, and you got a rubbing disc. Like, that's awful. And I can tell you this because I've had to hike a bike for 3 miles with a bicycle on my shoulder, cyclocross carry, by dealing with that. So please, please, please take the equipment component of this very seriously, and also take the fitness component. Application of fitness is going to save you on the day, okay? Very important.
All right, much appreciated. And, we'll see you May 3rd.